Tonight on The Buzz, we are talking 3D printers. We're used to pressing a button and having the words on screen appear on paper. But today, we can press a button and have the object on our screen printed using a 3D printer. In tonight's show, we look at what these things are, how they work, and how they're used in education and media. We start with Joel Tellen, host of the 3D Printing Nerd channel on YouTube. He sets the scene for the entire industry. Next, Braydon Moreno is the owner of Robo 3D, a manufacturer of 3D printers with a focus on education. Next, John Jordan is a teacher who owns a 3D printer and teaches it in the classroom. He shares his thoughts on how 3D printing can benefit students. Next, James DeRuvo, who's also a 3D printer owner, explains the expanding role of 3D printers in media and films. All this plus our weekly doddleNEWS update. The Buzz starts now.
Since the dawn of digital filmmaking,
authoritative.
One show serves a worldwide network of media professionals.
Current.
Uniting industry experts,
Production.
filmmakers,
Post-production.
and content creators around the planet.
Distribution.
From the media capital of the world in Los Angeles, California, the Digital Production Buzz goes live now.
Welcome to the Digital Production Buzz, the world's longest-running podcast for the creative content industry, covering media production, post-production, and marketing around the world. Hi, my name is Larry Jordan. I got my first look at a 3D printer last summer as I was visiting my brother John's home in Wisconsin. Cool, I thought, but not something I would pay a lot of attention to. Then, a few weeks ago, James DeRuvo suggested we do a show focused on 3D printers because of their increasing role in media. Intrigued, our team checked into it and discovered that 3D printers provide a lot of benefits for filmmakers, which is what tonight's show is all about. By the way, if you enjoy The Buzz, please give us a positive rating and review in the iTunes store. We appreciate your support to help us grow our audience. And now it's time for our weekly doddleNEWS update with James DeRuvo. Hello, James.
Well, hi there, Larry.
A wonderful Thursday to you. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, what I usually like to call football palooza from Thursday through Sunday. 20 games. It was just so footballed out.
Well, let's focus on something other than football. What's the news this week?
Well, yesterday, DJI announced a downscaled version of their Osmo gimbal. Remember the Osmo mobile gimbal for smartphones? It's extremely popular at $129. Well, they came out with this brand new one, which is about the size of a pair of sunglasses. It's really tiny, and it includes a 4K pocket camera. The handheld gimbal and the 4K camera is similar to the array that you find on the DJI Mavic drone. So it looks like they're kind of repurposing some of their technologies. And it includes smart features like active tracking, face track, selfie mode. And it also has options for manual control and video editing through a new app that DJI is going to be putting out after the first of the year called Mimo.
This got a lot of attention from my media-savvy students. What are your thoughts about the Osmo gimbal?
Well, as I mentioned, DJI looks like they're repurposing much of their technology that it uses on their smaller Mavic drone platforms. But there's another cool feature that looks similar to the failed GoPro Karma drone system, which is the ability to take that gimbal and mount it to a backpack or helmet, a bicycle, or even a dog. The Osmo Pocket is really versatile in that respect. And this leads me to believe that DJI wants to deliver a killing shot to their biggest competitor, which is GoPro. And at $349, they just might do it.
All right. Well, that's DJI. What's our next story?
I don't know if you're familiar with the software package called HitFilm by FX Home. Forever, I've wanted Adobe to come out with an After Effects Elements app, which would be like a scaled down $100 software package for beginners who would be able to do visual effects. Well, that is what HitFilm really is. It combines video editing and an effects suite and it's ideal for those just starting out. And with version 11, users are starting to get some really nifty features, which include this new module called Surface Studio, which gives users advanced titling capabilities with texture, decay, and damage, and they can do it in minutes rather than hours with a simple press of a button. Other features include the Exposure Pro, which is their color grading module, which enables you to grade footage with cinematic look. HitFilm is incorporating many of these recent features into their Express version of the software, which you can download for free at fxhome.com. And they also offer a really nifty pay-as-you-go annual subscription.
Tell me more about why we should consider HitFilm.
What separates HitFilm from other video editing and effects suites is that it does offer that free tier. So you can download and use it forever if you want to. And most of their clients, actually, that's what they get started in. It provides professional level effects, so it helps beginning filmmakers to hit the ground running. And when you're ready to get up to that next level, it's incredibly affordable at around $300. The pay-as-you-go model, basically it's $300 a year. And that gives you all of the updates that you get for the next year. But what's really cool about it is if they come out with a version of the software that you don't particularly, yeah, that's neat, but I'm not going to use any of those features, you can actually take a year off, take a version off and not upgrade and still use your software as it is. And then you can then go back and upgrade later on when a new feature comes that you really want to use. So I really like HitFilm. And on top of that, anybody who's considering getting into video editing should go to fxhome.com, download a copy of HitFilm Express and play around with it. It'll really rock your world.
All right. Well, that's DJI for story 1 and FX Home for story 2. What's our third story?
Well, this is the one you're not going to like. Could Sony's next mirrorless camera shoot in 8K? There's a really great rumor out that Sony is working on 2 new next-generation image sensors for their Alpha 7 and Alpha 9 camera lines. Sensor number 1 is a 60 megapixel, which will shoot 8K at 60 frames per second in 10-bit video, or it could go as high as 16-bit video if you're shooting in lower frame rates. Believed to be for the next-generation higher-end Sony a7R4. Sensor 2 is a 36 megapixel sensor, which will shoot at 8K 60 10-bit, but will have on-chip phase detection. It's believed to be for the more consumer-friendly Sony A9. And Sony will continue to use the technique called pixel binning, which will borrow from surrounding pixels to increase dynamic range and color accuracy. But they're also going to be adding a dual gain mode, which will improve dynamic range by as much as 2 stops, and a digital overlap HDR feature, which will bracket images by shooting frames simultaneously.
James, this is a rumor.
I know you hate rumors. I understand, admittedly. But the current A7R3 uses a very similar design, using pixel binning to achieve a really great 4K image from a larger size 6K sensor. So this 8K design would be the next logical step forward. But it does skip over 6K, and that makes me think that Sony will probably do 6K first before bringing 8K to a prosumer platform. Because honestly, I don't see 8K coming to a lower-end mirrorless or DSLR before 2020.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. And what other stories are you working on this week?
Other stories we're following, we review Trap Code 15 from Red Giant Software. What are the 10 must-have items in your beginning filmmaker quiver? And is there a difference between color correction and color grading? That's what's going on here. I'm looking forward to your topic tonight, by the way.
Especially because you're a part of it.
Got that right.
Tonight we're exploring an idea that you suggested, which is 3D printing. We're looking at this from a variety of perspectives, including education and media, and I'm looking forward to talking with you later in the show about your perspectives on using 3D printing in media.
You know, once it hits the mainstream, 3D printing is going to be one of those technologies that you don't remember your life before it was there.
Well, I want to hear more about that when we chat in just a few minutes. James, where can we go on the web to learn more about the stories you and your team are covering?
All these stories and more can be found at doddleNEWS.com.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of doddleNEWS and joins us every week. I'll see you next Thursday.
See you then.
Here's another website I want to introduce you to, doddleNEWS.com. DoddleNEWS gives you a portal into the broadcast, video, and film industries. It's a leading online resource presenting news, reviews, and products for the film and video industry. DoddleNEWS also offers a resource guide and crew management platform specifically designed for production. These digital call sheets, along with their app, directory, and premium listings, provide in-depth organizational tools for busy production professionals. DoddleNEWS is a part of the Thalo Arts community, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with resources you need to succeed. Whether you want the latest industry news, need to network with other creative professionals, or require state-of-the-art online tools to manage your next project, there's only one place to go, doddleNEWS.com. Joel Telling hosts the 3D Printing Nerd YouTube channel. He started out with this as a way for him to share what he was doing with his first 3D printer, and since then, it has evolved into a trusted online place for 3D printer reviews, tips, and tricks. Hello, Joel. Welcome.
Good morning, Larry.
What first got you interested in 3D printing?
I've been a nerd all my life, and so I had followed 3D printing, and I said, you know what, one day I really need one of those things in my life because it seems appropriate. I would have a lot of fun with it. It's, again, it's the evolution of being a nerd and collecting all the awesome tools you can.
Yeah, but let me push back. I mean, why 3D printing? You could have chosen erector sets or robots or, dartboards. What was it about 3D printing that caught your attention?
Well, this isn't an exclusive thing. I think this is an and or an or, because I did have erector sets growing up. I've collected Lego ever since I was a child. Duct tape and cardboard have built all sorts of really cool G.I. Joe and Transformer forts. String was used to make trapdoors. So creativity was never something that I had a deficit in. I think 3D printing allowed me another unique avenue to explore and possibly exploit it.
Well, for those of us who haven't built erector sets and gaffers taped or transformers to the wall, what makes 3D printing technology worth using? Why should the rest of us pay attention?
What a lot of people are going to tell you is that 3D printing is a manufacturing technology that allows you to make things no other manufacturing technology can make. And that's true because 3D printing relies on layers. It builds up layer after layer to make something. And so if you want to build something inside of something else that can't be vacuum formed, that can't be injection molded, then you're going to use 3D printing to do that. But what I like to say for 3D printing is it allows you to quickly create something that you can only visualize in your mind. And so staring at this thing that I love on my computer screen that I've created with all my heart and all my soul is one thing, but then to take that and produce something that I can hold and touch and feel, it's another level. It's just another world, and it's amazing.
Joel, I can't draw a straight line without mechanical assistance. I've got no design skills. Should I just give up on the whole process of using 3D printers?
No, not at all, Larry, because this is what's great, too. There are a ton of people like you. You and your deficit of skill, let's say, is not unique. Tons and tons of people out there are either they don't have the skills for design or they're not interested in learning how to design. But on the other side of the fence, there are a lot of people who love to design things, who love to design things for people, and who love to share them. So along with 3D printing, there are also large communities of people who share these 3D models that they create. In fact, one of the websites that's been there from the beginning, Thingiverse, it's a universe of things. It's a way for someone to freely share a model that they create and for someone such as yourself to download and print.
Let's focus more specifically on the audience for the buzz, which is people who create media, filmmakers, independents, and people doing it for corporate. Is this technology valuable to them?
I want to say yes. So as someone who makes video content, I do have microphones and video cameras and wires and stuff all over in my little home studio here. And I've used 3D printing to augment the experience. Just as an example, I have a tripod. It's a Manfrotto tripod. It's an expensive tripod, but I needed it to be about 6 inches taller. And rather than putting it on a box, I wanted a solution that was reusable and something that would be easy to take with the tripod. And I couldn't go spend another $1,000 or $2,000 on a taller set of tripod legs. So what I did is I used 3D printing to adapt PVC pipe to the end of my tripod legs. And so instead of having to buy a new tripod or put some boxes down, I had brackets that attached two things that weren't originally intended to go together. And that solved my problem. It raised my tripod and I had a better shot. And so if you think about that, there are tons of situations where a camera or a light or something needs to be mounted to something else. And those two things were never intended to go together. And so using 3D design and 3D printing, you can make the unique, custom, awesome bracket that will put those two things together and make your day better.
There are a number of different 3D printers in the market. How do we determine which 3D printer is best for our needs?
You know, I get asked a lot, what is the best 3D printer?
I didn't ask that.
No, I know. And it's good that you didn't, because you're an informed person, Larry, and that's what I like about you. So that's not the best question to ask. What people want to ask is, what is my budget? What do I want to get out of 3D printing? What sort of material do I want to make stuff out of? And how much space do I have available? Those are the kind of questions you want to ask. And so of the hundreds or thousands of different 3D printers out there, you can think, you know what? There's a specific plastic I would really like to try that's infused with carbon fiber because I like stiffer materials that make stiffer parts. But I know a 3D printer that's going to print that, it's going to need to get a little bit hotter. So I'm going to need this class of machine in order to extrude that plastic. That's still a little bit technical as well, but...
Let me ask the question differently.
Sure.
Let's say that what we want to do is we want to create tripod legs, or we want to create hand props for a movie. Do we have to buy the absolute most expensive printer? Or what criteria should we use to determine what printer meets those needs, seeing as I'm not a plastics expert?
For you and those kind of needs, I think the best question to ask yourself is, how big do you want to print? Normally in a situation like that, you're not going to need any sort of specialized 3D printing filaments. You're just going to need something that can print a size for a model that you want. And looking out across all the different 3D printers that are made, there are ones that are small and there are ones that are large. And then once you narrow down a size of machine that you want, you can start to do the research and find out, is this the right one or is this other one the right one?
In our next segment, we're going to be talking to a manufacturer of 3D printers. If I'm a customer trying to decide to buy that printer, what questions should I ask the manufacturer?
If you're going to be talking to a manufacturer, some of the questions you may want to ask is, what is the price of the machine? Do you offer a warranty? Is your machine open source? Are others using your machine? Is there a support forum I can have access to? Is there a user base that's helpful online? Do you ship fast? Is it pre-assembled or do I have to put it together myself? How hot does the hot end get? Is the bed heated? Is the printer enclosed? Do I have to worry about emissions from heating the plastic, or is there a filtration system? Those are some of the questions you may want to ask a manufacturer.
Well, clearly, you've been doing this for a while, and as I look at your YouTube channel, you've been telling the world about it. Why'd you decide to start a YouTube channel?
To share what I had learned. Originally, when I got my 3D printer, I thought about making something and selling it on Etsy. I was like, this is cool technology. I could use this to make money. It's not a bad thing to think, but I designed 3D printed cookie cutters. It was super easy, and I sold them on Etsy, and it was great. But then I said I wanted to do more. And I have a GoPro camera, and holding it with one hand, it doesn't really steady the shot. And so I thought, using 3D printing, what if I made a GoPro camera rig, something I could hold with two hands and steady the shot? Because my goal was I wanted to chase the kids around as they were going around picking up Easter eggs. So the original intent of my YouTube channel was to kind of show the process of how I designed this GoPro handle, this rig, this thing to hold my camera. And I did chase the kids around finding the Easter eggs, and it worked out great, Larry. And then I released it for free and others could download it. And that's how it all started. I wanted to show people how easy it was, or how easy it wasn't, to design something for a specific purpose.
How often do you create new content? And tell me about your creation process. Now, remember, you're talking to filmmakers, so we're interested in the tech.
It used to be I was creating content 3 to 4 times a week back in the day. What I would do was once my wife and kids were all asleep at 11 p.m., I'd turn on the studio lights and I'd turn on the camera, and I had my mic plugged directly into the camera so I didn't have to match up audio and video. And I would just try to have something printing from the previous night that I could then talk about and do. But that got to be too much of a hectic schedule. So now I have an editor, and I try to create content 1 to 2 times per week. I film with a Canon XF400. I have a couple Sennheiser wireless lav mics. I have a cool studio with some decent lighting that I'm able to show stuff up on. And then I record, I bring it all into Premiere, I create proxies, I send it off to my editor, and he sends me back edits, and I'm able to then render it, watch it down, and then publish it to YouTube, hopefully in a day or 2, depending on his schedule.
Shoot with one camera and do multiple angles, or multiple cameras?
It depends on how ambitious I am for the certain video. I have a couple different cameras. So I've got my Samsung Galaxy Note 8, which I do use to pick up some shots. I've got my GoPro for time-lapse photography. I've got I have my XF400 and an old Sony camera in case I want to do 2 camera angles. But usually it's one camera just doing the shots, and then I'll go through at the end and pick up some closer shots of products or prints that I've done so that those can be inserted later as B-roll.
You've had 800 gazillion views on YouTube, so clearly there's a lot of people who are interested. How would you define your audience?
That's a really good question, Larry. So people who are interested in this technology, people that like to use this technology, and people a lot smarter than me, possibly on the industrial side of this technology, who want to see what the hobby market is currently doing.
So you would define your audience as the interested hobbyist?
I think that's a fair assumption. I think that by being open and honest with my audience and conveying a really happy, fun, interesting, inquisitive sort of attitude towards things not only helps me learn, but it helps my audience learn along the way, and we're all learning together.
One last question before I go back and start watching more videos on your channel. I am a hobbyist, and maybe not quite as nerdy as you are, but I'm quite willing to have a race. How much should I spend to get started? What should I look at for a budget?
I think approaching the 3D printing hobby with a $500 budget, it leaves you room to get a really decent, somewhat smaller machine. It leaves you room to get a couple different colors or a couple different types of 3D printing filament that machine can make stuff with. And then you have a little headroom just in case you want to get some accessories or something like that. You can get a really decent 3D printer right now. It's not the largest, but it'll print really well, reliably over time for $200 to $250. And then you'd want a couple spools of filament. So you're looking at $20 to $30 per spool for some decent quality stuff. And then you're not at the ceiling of your budget. You do have some room just in case you're like, wow, I really like this, and you want to get some more stuff right away.
Very, very cool. Joel, for people that want to keep track of what you're doing and pay attention to all of your videos, where's the best place on the web for them to go?
Right now, that best place is YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and you look up 3D Printing Nerd, you'll find me every time.
And Joel Telling hosts the 3D Printing Nerd YouTube channel. That's 3, the number 3D is in dimension. Printing Nerd, 3D Printing Nerd on the YouTube. And Joel, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Larry. That was awfully kind of you for the invitation. Braydon
Moreno owns a technology company in 3D printing. Robo 3D. They design and make desktop 3D printers with a focus on bringing 3D printers into the classroom. Over the last 5 years, they've sold printers to over 4,500 cities across 105 countries around the world. Hello, Braydon, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
5 years ago, how did your company get started?
It's actually a pretty simple story. My business partner, his name is Kobe. He was going to San Diego State University, so he was a senior in college, and his senior design project in mechanical engineering was to develop a 3D printed prosthetic leg. That was his idea. And prosthetics can be very expensive, so he thought, if I can 3D print it, I can save a lot of money and customize it for every individual person. So he started doing that, and we became fascinated by the technology and realized that we could be a tool maker to help people build and bring their ideas to life. And so we started building our first machine shortly after he built that prosthetic project. We launched it on Kickstarter and ended up raising $650,000, which was basically us pre-selling about 1,100 3D printers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've used a word makers twice, and I don't understand what that means. What's the difference between a maker and anybody else?
We call makers people that are inherently designing and building ideas. So the makers are the ones that want to get their hands dirty. They want to build something. And there's lots of people that are inclined for that. They're already designing things. They're already creating things. And then there's people that aren't necessarily doing that on a regular basis. So when we were designing our first machine, it was, hey, these guys that are buying, or these ladies or men that are buying these, they already know what they're looking for. They know that they're going to use this to create ideas that they already have, potentially start a business, or enhance the business that they currently have. So those were our maker mindset people.
As I understand it, what a 3D printer does is it takes a thin string of plastic, melts it, and deposits it on the bed and builds the shape. How do we decide what plastic filament to use?
Yeah, there's different types of 3D printing technology. The one that's most widely used because of its price point is technology that we sell. It's called FDM. And so, yeah, that's taking a string of plastic, melting it, and essentially drawing a layer, moving up and drawing a layer on top of that and building layers. The different materials that you would use, how you decide is, what strength quality you're looking for. So different materials will have different strength properties. So if you need something that's going to be more susceptible to pressure or stress, you can use a different material, or the actual finish of the end product. So we sell a material called carbon fiber, PLA. So it has carbon mixed in with the plastic, and it creates a matte black finish. And so that's another reason you would use a material.
In the intro, and I got this from your website, you mentioned that you're focusing on bringing 3D printers into the classroom. How do you make the shift from creating prosthetic devices into the classroom?
When we first started, we were very focused on the maker market and building 3D printers for makers and people that were building specific ideas or prototypes. And I think what we've seen recently is how positive an impact 3D printing can play in the classroom. So for us, it was, let's make this shift and really focus on how do we empower the students from a very young age using 3D printing. And so we've been doing quite a bit in terms of creating content and developing machines that are easy for educators and students to use, as well as a curriculum that empowers the students and teachers to use in the classroom.
Positive impact how?
STEM education, so science, technology, engineering, math, has been a huge focus and a big shift in education. It's sort of the trending thing that's happening in the classroom. 3D printing plays such a significant and powerful role in STEM and preparing students for the jobs that are coming tomorrow, which are going to require technical skills. And so giving them machines like this and allowing them to, look at the world a little differently and be able to solve problems and create ideas is something that's going to be beneficial for them beyond the classroom.
Well, give me an example.
STEM education, if you talk about technical skilled jobs, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, even as far as dietitians, nutritionists, they require certain skill sets. And with 3D printing and some of the curriculum that we have, our goal is to activate that mindset within students. We always talk about this idea of what's called 3D thinking, and it's where these students can, instead of going out in the world and just accepting things the way they are, they're going out and they're seeing, wow, I could actually make this better. And by doing simple design skills and using 3D printing to bring that idea to life, they can actually create products or create solutions to some of the problems that are out in the world.
It isn't just the 3D printing, it's the process of creating the 3D image in the first place that you're emphasizing.
Yeah, I would say it's more of the process than specifically the 3D printing. The 3D printing is really the tool to bring that to life, but it's the process of kind of ideating, creating, potentially failing, and going back to the drawing board and doing it again. That's the real benefit for students.
Well, the audience for the Buzz are filmmakers and media creators. Can 3D printers help us?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we've seen tons of examples of 3D printing being used in filmmaking and developing props and things like that. It's a lot of people don't even know, but in all the James Bond movies, they use the 3D printers to make a lot of the vehicles and things like that for those movies. So, when you're able to kind of design something, which is what they're doing anyways, they're designing them in animation software. You can actually take those animations and you can take that model and actually print it and have a physical object of what you're actually going to be filming.
I suspect I'm not alone, and I've mentioned this to Joel Telling in the last interview, but I have no design skills. Does that mean I can't use a 3D printer?
A lot of people actually, when we first started, didn't have design skills. And, I would say 5-6 years ago when we were in the space, you would have needed some design skills to really get off the ground. But now there's millions of models online that are free to download. There's websites like myminifactory.com and thingiverse.com, and they all have free content that were designed by incredible designers all over the world that you can just go on and you can browse. So if you have a GoPro, for example, and you want to go on there and type GoPro mounts, there's thousands of different mounts you could download and print, or iPhone cases. So there's a lot of different stuff that's already available on there.
I was on Google a little bit earlier before this interview doing some research, and I realized there's more than one 3D printer manufacturer out there.
Oh, yeah.
What criteria should we use in picking a manufacturer?
I think when we started, there was only 20 different manufacturers making machines, and now there's hundreds of them making machines. So one of the criteria I would definitely focus on is obviously the reviews of the company and the products that they have, as well as the kind of the reputation that they've already built. Do they have a social following? Do they have a community following? We've been able to build about a 15,000 person community in terms of people interacting with each other on our forums. So having that really helps, when you're getting up and running.
Well, now that we've got a manufacturer picked, what criteria should we use in picking a 3D printer? Because I think it's not a question of the best printer, it's the one that works for our needs.
Yeah, exactly. And I always, when I go to shows, I'm very honest with people because they'll need a printer for a certain thing. And if ours doesn't fit into that wheelhouse, then we're not going to recommend it. But one of the things, there's a couple different factors. One, I would say is, obviously the speed that you're needing. So there's other technologies other than ours that are a lot quicker, but they're more expensive. So price is another factor. How much are you willing to spend? The size of the platform that you need in terms of how big do you want to actually make objects. That's a factor to keep in mind. And then a lot of just the feature sets and a lot of the reputation behind the products. Does it work well? Does it last a long time? Have people had success with the products? So those are things to look for.
Well, that gets me to your products.
Yeah.
What do you guys make?
Our first design machine was called the R1. It was specifically made for makers. So we wanted people to be able to hack on it, build on it, add things to it. And we were very successful with that product. And we've recently, within the last year and a half, released 2 what we call our smart 3D printers. So we have a compact version, which is our C2. And then we have a more high performance version, which is our R2. They range from $700 to $1,500. And we built a lot of smart features into the actual devices. So when you're using the machine, there's a lot of things that can fail. They have sensors and let you know when there's errors and things like that, so you can fix it. They have substantial build volume, speed, quality on them, and we tried to integrate it with things like an iOS app and an Android app, so you can actually print through the actual apps, which is cool. So we built a lot of really high-end features into the 2 machines, and at a price point that's pretty accessible in the market.
How long does a 3D printer last?
3D printer usually lasts in the range of a couple years. There is pieces and components of it that you can replace that'll prolong the life of it.
What tends to fail?
The print head is the main thing. So the actual device that is melting the material and laying it down, that tends to fail over time because a lot of people use different materials that wear that nozzle out essentially. And so you might have to replace that over a period of time.
I read the story I'd love to have you tell me about the father that used a 3D printer for his blind daughter. Tell me about that.
One of the things that was amazing for us, we didn't really realize this when we got into the industry, but we didn't think about specific examples of how the 3D printer would be used. We just knew that we were selling a tool to help people create things. And a story that spoke to us and came to us after we sold it was one of our initial Kickstarter buyers is a guy named Jason. He's a really awesome guy. Him and his family, him and his wife adopted 3 different kids. And one of the kids they adopted, their most recent one, was their blind daughter. And she, he was able to take his 3D design and the 3D printer and was able to take things in the real world that people that are able to see can actually see them, but he was able to scale them down and print them and teach her about the world. So the specific example that he told me was they go to the beach a lot. They're also in San Diego, and she can hear the ocean, but she's never seen what the ocean does. So he was able to kind of design a wave, an artificial wave, and 3D print it, and she was able to feel and touch it, and he was able to teach her about the ocean. So that was an amazing story. And there's lots of those that have come to us over the years.
For people that want more information about the products you create or the curricula you provide, where can they go on the web?
They can go to our website, www.robo3d.com. You'll see all the information about the printers and some of the other products that we have.
That website is all one word, ROBO, the number 3, the letter D, robo3d.com. And Braydon Moreno owns Robo3D. And Braydon, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to introduce you to a new website, Thalo.com. Thalo is an artist community and networking site for creative people to connect, be inspired, and showcase their creativity. Thalo.com features content from around the world with a global perspective on all things creative. Thalo is the place for creative folks to learn, collaborate, market, and sell their works. Thalo is a part of Thalo Arts, a worldwide community of artists, filmmakers, and storytellers. From photography to filmmaking, performing arts to fine arts, and everything in between, Thalo is filled with the resources you need to succeed. Visit Thalo.com and discover how their community can help you connect, learn, and succeed. That's Thalo.com. John Jordan is licensed and certified to teach communication, theater arts, and computer science in the state of Wisconsin. He spent 25 years in television and was inducted in 2012 into the Wisconsin Community Media Hall of Fame. He's currently teaching computer science to students in the Stevens Point area school district. Hello, John. Welcome.
Hello. How are you doing today?
I'm really looking forward to our conversation because you've been experimenting with something I'm curious about, which is 3D printers. What first interested you in 3D printing?
Where I got started is I've worked with microprocessing boards like Circuit Playgrounds and Raspberry Pis and Arduinos. Part of what you do with those is they start out as a board and you need to come up with some way to enclose them or to incorporate them into something a little bit more sturdy. In the process of looking for these enclosures, I started looking at 3D printers.
So is the sole thing that you've been using the printer for is putting circuit boards together?
No, not the sole thing. Because once I've got the 3D printer and I started making the enclosures for my circuit boards, I started looking around at some other websites like My Mini Factory or Thingiverse or Tinkercad and seeing all the pre-made models that you can download and incorporate and do things with. For an English teacher last year, I made a 3D print of the Globe Theater because they were doing a Shakespeare unit, and I thought it'd be sort of cool just to give her a representation of the Globe Theater for her use in her English classroom. I've made lightning bolts for some of my students, lightning bolts because they're were known as the chargers, and that is the lightning bolts incorporated into our logo. Printed out some yellow lightning bolts that were used as key fobs or keychains or or whatnot. And I've seen some of these lightning bolts attached to backpacks this year.
Do you have to have design skills to use the printer?
No, you don't. It helps. But there are a lot of models that you can do searching for. Like, for example, the Globe Theater that I did. I did a search on Thingiverse, and there were models of historical landmarks, and one of the model that came up was the Globe Theater. And so I printed that out. You could find models of the Leaning Tower of Pisa or the Colosseum. So it doesn't have to be anything that you've created. You can do searching for models that you could download. You could build a physical concept of a four-cylinder engine or a motor that you can hook an air compressor to see how the pistons go up and down and how they would drive shafts.
What model did you get, and why did you pick it?
The model that I have is a Maker Select Plus 3D printer. One, it was inexpensive, relatively speaking. It was about $250, not including the filament. I also bought it because it is the same model that the Ben Franklin Junior High School that I'm working at purchased this past summer. And so that if there were problems or idiosyncrasies with these printers, we'd be able to work together, or I can type on their resources to help figure out what's going on.
Have you found the device to be reasonably reliable?
Reasonably reliable. One of the things that I've noticed and I've heard about that you need to make sure of is on your 3D printers, you need to make sure it's on a steady platform and it needs to be level. Because if it's not level, the gap between the head that extrudes the filament and the bed where you're putting things on, if there's gapping, it could destroy the print. Because you need to make sure it is level, because you're talking about a distance of about 1 millimeter between the base and where the extruder is. And if it starts gapping, then you won't have as good adhesion and it won't be as good of a print.
Braydon Moreno, earlier in the show, who's with Robo 3D, told us that 3D printers encourage students to pursue more STEM subjects. They serve as a reward for learning engineering. As you work in the classroom, both with yourself and with other teachers, what do you see students' reactions to 3D printers?
They like to be able to see something tangible. One of the teachers I work with is an industrial arts teacher. Some of the things that we do is doing design work on the computer. And yes, it looks nice on the computer, and you can see that it is a 3D model on the screen, which is still two-dimensional. But you don't have, unless you have a computer to show off to somebody, you really can't take that computer screen to your parents' house or your grandparents' house. Hey, this is what we created in class. But once you take that drawing that you made and set it into the 3D printer, they are able to take what they printed. One of the things they did this year was to create dog tags with their initials on them. And they can choose whatever color filament, because filament colors are a rainbow of colors, yellow and orange and purple and blue and whatever, or school colors and black and white and whatnot, even glow-in-the-dark colors. And so they were able to choose the color that they want to print on, and then they would send the program to the printer, and the printer will print it out, and after 45 minutes to an hour, because these are just dog tag size things, they had something physical that they can take home with them and say, this is what we made in shop today, as opposed to birdhouses or air compressed cars. This is something they created from the ether using the computer to create the design, to send something and create something physical that they can hold in their hand.
The whole world of 3D printing is relatively new, and we're still trying to figure out where it fits in, especially in terms of education. As you think about it, how could you integrate 3D printers within computer science to get your kids more interested in the technology?
There are a number of ways you can do that. For example, going back to the Raspberry Pi, about 2-3 years ago, Raspberry Pi was put into an enclosure, an aluminum-made enclosure, and sent up to the International Space Station. There is a model that you can download and create a plastic version of that enclosure, put the Raspberry Pi in, with the same buttons and the same connections that are used in the space station, and you can say, okay, let's program this to do something and see if our results are similar to the results that the astronauts have done on the space station. So you're using the 3D printer to replicate something that is being done in science in the real world up in space. The thing you need to keep in mind is the time involved to actually extrude the filament to create your object. The larger your object or the more complex it is, the longer it takes to print out. Like our dog tags, for example, those take 45 minutes to print out a dog tag unless you are using a number of different dog tags at the same time to do a batch print. But if it's like the Globe Theater, that took about 12 to 14 hours to print out. And so you need to allow for that time to get things printed out. It is not something that you can just sit during the class period and see a completed printout for the more complex things.
As you've been reflecting on it over the last 6 months or so that you've had the printer, what's the most fun thing about having access to a 3D printer?
Coming up with things to make for people. Just having the printer, I need to have some reason to have something to print. I can only have so many doodads on my desk before my desk overflows. And I enjoy doodads, and I have a desk that does overflow. But you need to have a reason to print something out.
How do you decide which filament to use for a project?
The filaments that I use are PLA, simply because when I print, I don't need to worry about fumes, so I don't have to worry about what it smells like, because the ABS when it's using, it has a hot or melted plastic smell, which can be annoying. So I use the PLA. It's not as strong, but then most of the things that I print, I'm not putting in a high-tech or a high-temperature, stressful situation where the ABS would be more useful. Price point between ABS and PLA is about the same. So I've been generally going with the PLA.
John, this has been fascinating. Thanks so very much for sharing your time, and we'll touch back in a year or two and see how you're using 3D printers then.
Sounds good. It's been good to talk to you.
James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of doddleNEWS, but as you heard earlier in our news segment, he's also a fan of 3D printing, especially working with 3D printing in media. Hello, James. Welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back.
What first got you interested in 3D printing?
You know, I saw a video on YouTube by a guy named Joel Telling, which is on the show this week, called The 3D Printing Nerd. And his entire channel is about 3D printing. And it got me intrigued about what is going on. It used to be called rapid prototyping, where they would take a CAD drawing and they would output a prototype using a special printer. But with the beginning of I believe the MakerBot series, Bree Pettis created this consumer-friendly desktop 3D printer, which would enable people to create models or create a missing part, and I just thought, boy, this could be one of those transformational technologies, like I said before, where you don't remember your life before it happened, much like the iPhone is today. It's really kind of a nifty thing where you could go online, download a 3D model, hit print, and it will print. And I had a case where when I got my 3D printer and I got a Robo R1 Plus from Braydon Moreno's Robo 3D company, I accidentally dropped the ceramic lid on my dog's treat jar and shattered in 1,000 pieces. So I went online and I went to this website called Tinkercad, and I designed a replacement which had a custom handle on it with my dog's name on it. And I designed that, and 45 minutes later, I had printed it, and it fitted perfectly on my lid, and I was done. And I thought, this is going to change the world.
Before I get into how it'll change the world for filmmakers, let's take a sidestep. What brand of 3D printer did you buy, and why did you pick that brand?
I got the Robo R1 Plus, and I had done a review of the printer back in 2016. You pull it out of the box, you plug it in, and you're ready to go. A lot of the 3D printers you have to put together. This one you didn't. It was just all in one. And so it was very turnkey. It was very, plug and play. All I had to do was download the necessary what's called the slicing software, which slices the 3D model up into layers so that the 3D printer can print it. And so I installed all of that, and it just worked. It worked really good. There were some problems, and when I ran into those problems, I would call up Robo 3D, and their technical support was so good. In my review, I called it a feature of the printer. Because quite honestly, although 3D printing does sound great, and it is, it's a lot of fun, it's a great hobby, and for filmmakers, it will really transform your pre-production process if you're building costumes or props or that type of thing. And 3D printers are really starting to become commonplace in the film industry. But even through all that, it is kind of the high-maintenance girlfriend of the creative process. There's just a whole lot of features that you have to juggle to keep your printer happy. The more experienced you are with it, the easier it is. In the beginning, it's kind of difficult, and I kind of found the R1 Plus to be, it's a huge print bed, so I can do a lot of different printing with it. I can print lightsabers, I can print helmets, I can just do everything with it. But it was an easier printer to use that was very affordable. It's only I believe it's only $4.99 right now. And they do have another one called the Robo R2, which is the next generation of the design, which has an enclosure and has a webcam so that you can do wireless printing from your mobile device. It's just, there's a lot of things that you can do with it. And I really liked the design, and I liked how for a beginner, it was a really great beginning printer that wasn't cheap.
When you're creating a design and printing it out, is the plastic sturdy?
It depends on the plastic that you use. There are some plastics, and that's another one of those functions, because when you 3D print it, they have this thing called infill, which is just how much plastic are you going to put on the inside of your model. So you can create a honeycomb effect and use less plastic. It'll print faster. You use less filament, but it might not be as sturdy as if you used 100%. There's just a lot of factors there. And even in the best of conditions, it can take hours to print something. I've got at the foot of my desk here a costume helmet that I 3D printed for my son. And it took me probably 150 hours to print all the parts for it.
Well, that gets me to one of the key things I want to find out about is what's the relevance of 3D printing to filmmakers?
I'll give you a perfect example. Did you see the movie Skyfall, the James Bond film?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember the scene in Skyfall where a helicopter shot up that iconic 65 Aston Martin? Well, filmmakers aren't going to destroy $1 million car like that 65 Aston Martin that James Bond was known to drive. So the filmmakers 3D printed a small-scale version of that Aston Martin so that they could destroy it. That's what 3D printing is being used for in the entertainment industry now. It's being used for prototyping props, for adding embellishments to costumes, for making set pieces. Right now, we even have 3D printers that'll print a house. And I think that there may come a time where a set designer will design a set and then 3D print it in a studio, in a soundstage, and you'll just set up this 3D printer and it'll 3D print, and you can use filament that has wood in it, that has carbon fiber in it, that has steel in it, that has just a host and they use powders embedded in a polymer is how they are able to do it. And it really is a wonderful way to use your imagination to design and create props and costume pieces and set pieces. It's and prototyping it, and then you can go from there, and you can either continue to create them that way, or you can use that prototype to make it in more conventional fashion.
One last question before I let you go. Many of us are not designers, at least not CAD designers. Where can we go to download models that we could use?
There are a wide variety of websites. The most popular is a place called Thingiverse. Thingiverse, Thingiverse.com. It's run by AutoCAD. And there's thousands of them there. You can go to Yegi.com. There's STLfinder.com. There's MyMiniFactory.com. There's a ton of places. If you're just starting out, I recommend you spend some time over at Tinkercad.com. You can get models there, or you can create models there. And you can download models and then take them into some place like Tinkercad and change them a little bit. I've used my 3D printer to print. I printed a camera cage with it, mounts with it for my GoPro. I've printed just a host of other things. If you're a filmmaker that's really into every aspect of production, a 3D printer is a really great tool to have in your studio.
James, thank you so very much. We'll stay in touch with you on this subject over the coming months, and thanks again for sharing your time. But the principal reason you're here is because of doddleNEWS, and what's that website?
All our stories can be found at doddleNEWS.com, including stories on 3D printing, by the way.
And James DeRuvo is the editor-in-chief of doddleNEWS.com and joins us every week with the latest news. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
You know, I was just thinking, I'm not sure I'm ready to agree with James DeRuvo that 3D printers will change the world, but they do offer a fascinating way to quickly create a physical object from a design. While printing times can run into hours, this is still far faster than creating a prototype out of aluminum or clay or plaster. What intrigues me most, though, is Braydon's comment that 3D printing attracts students to STEM classes because they make abstract drawings real. It's hard to bring a CAD drawing home to show to your parents, but dog tags, as John illustrated, make these drawings real. Anything we can do to encourage students to study the sciences and engineering is a good thing, because those skills, more than any other, will be critical to society going forward. Plus, the sheer fun of pushing a button and watching something become real is still exciting. Whether it's watching a photo emerge from a color printer or the Globe Theater grow in front of your eyes. I can understand why James thinks 3D printers are magical. Just something I'm thinking about. I want to thank our guests this week, Joel Telling with 3D Printing Nerd, Braydon Moreno with Robo 3D, teacher John Jordan, and James DeRuvo with doddleNEWS.com. There's a lot of history in our industry, and it's all posted to our website at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Here you'll find thousands of interviews, all online and all available to you today. And remember to sign up for our free weekly show newsletter that comes out every Saturday morning. Talk with us on Twitter at DPBuzz and Facebook at digitalproductionbuzz.com. Our theme music is composed by Nathan Doogie Turner, with additional music provided by smartsound.com. Our producer is Debbie Price. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for listening to the Digital Production Buzz. The Digital Production Buzz is copyright 2018 by Thalo LLC.